gone through now lots of different items that you're definitely going to need in your disaster kit. But one of the things that is really important also is that there are going to be some items that are going to be really specific to where you live because of the types of threats that you deal with. Now, in disaster management, one of the things that I do when I talk to audiences is I tell them that there are 3 basic categories of disasters: natural disasters, technological disasters, and security disasters. So let's talk about natural disasters. We know about those, right? Wildfires, floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. These are things that are basically naturally caused. So when you're dealing with those, when I look at specific threat environments, I will recommend specific kinds of equipment. And in future videos, if you put in the comments some disasters where you'd like me to actually comment on specific types of equipment for specific kinds of disasters, I will definitely do that. So for example, if you live in wildfire country, there are specific kinds of masks that you need to wear that are specific for smoke, and some N95 masks don't do that. So you need to get a specific mask that will actually block out smoke. If you live in an area where there's a lot of flooding, there are certain kinds of equipment that will go with you that'll help you as you're going through the flood, because you're going to have certain kinds of rain gear. Basic poncho ain't going to cut it. So there's certain things that I can offer that will be very specific to those kinds of risks in the natural environment. In technological disasters, I actually know of people who live near military installations where there are certain kinds of weapons that are being either decommissioned. They have certain kinds of gas masks, and those are very specific Scott masks, and they have very specific filters on them, and those are ones that would go in your kit. Also, people who are near certain kinds of factories. This happens a lot in the Midwest and on the East Coast, where literally I will make sure they're issued certain kinds of masks, and they have certain kinds of equipment, and they have certain kinds of actual uniforms that they can put on. So things that are not things other people would not need, but you would if you live in a place where there are chemicals. When we're talking about security emergencies, I don't get into that as often, but if we're talking about security emergencies where you're dealing with rapid kinds of threats, there are certain kinds of locks, crowbars, things that sometimes I'll ask to people, especially if they work in certain kinds of areas where they have to be secured in. There are certain kinds of equipment that I'll specifically recommend. Don't have time in this video to go into that, but I just wanted to make sure you understood that in each kind of risk category and sub-risk, there are certain kinds of equipment that will be attached, and depending upon where you live, you're going to need those things. And another example is if you live in a place where you get severe winter storms and you're trapped in your car. Actually, in your car, that means we're going to actually have to get a separate disaster kit that fits in your car and will have very, very specific types of equipment that maybe wouldn't go in your basic backpack, but will go in your car backpack. In the next video, I'm going to talk about where these backpacks will all go, but you want to make sure that you'll have specific winter gear if you were ever stuck in a place where you're unable to get out of your car, because you may be stuck there for hours and maybe even as long as a day. So you want to make sure that you have the right equipment, and each type of risk environment will mean certain kinds of equipment will be needed for you. This is Disaster Patrick, and remember, prepare for a disaster and you'll never experience one.